Welcome to Dear Book Coach. I'm Carrie Savage, writer, project manager, and certified book coach.
And I'm Stephanie Detlas, writer and book coach.
And I'm Terry Thayer, writer, certified book coach, certified focusing professional.
This is a friendly advice space as you plan, draft, and revise your novel. In each video, we answer one question submitted by a writer like you with 3 different points of view, and you get to pick the advice that resonates with you. This week's question is from Marilyn. I'm feeling a lot of resistance when it comes to working on my project. I walked away from it for a while and I feel compelled to revisit it, but I feel myself making excuses not to work on it. And when I do sit down with it, I find it hard to put more words on the page. Yet I think about how much I want to work on it at other times of the day. How do you recommend overcoming or dealing with resistance? Stephanie, would you like to kick us off?
Sure. I just want to say, as I do in many of these questions, I hear you. I feel your pain. You are not alone. We all experience resistance from time to time. It's a very natural thing for our brain to not want to do something that's uncomfortable. And putting words on a page or revising words we've already written is not easy. It's not comfortable. It's going out of our comfort zone. And so our biological drive is to avoid that. And so resistance is that. I mean, we just have to understand that it's normal and not think that anything's wrong with us because it's happening. I recently felt this summer, actually, this past summer. I was feeling this with my own work in progress, and I had to walk away from it for about a month to get through it. And that was what I needed. It was partly circumstances as well, but I needed to spend some time asking myself where that resistance was actually coming from, because I felt like the story was compelling to me. The story mattered to me personally, but I needed to understand within myself where that resistance was coming from. Was it some belief that I was telling myself about myself as a writer, or about whether the story was good or not? Or was I telling myself something like, nobody's going to want to read this, so why bother? You know, these are the things that we have to explore. Are we thinking those kinds of thoughts? Because those kinds of thoughts are tricky, they're sneaky, and they actually create more resistance within us. So if we're going, I'm not good enough, then of course our body's gonna be like, all right, sweet, let's go watch Netflix, you know? And so those thoughts, we feel the resistance, and then we generate thoughts about the resistance, which create more resistance. And so I would just encourage you to acknowledge that, to know it, and maybe spend some time exploring those thoughts that might be generating resistance for you. Then I would also say that, resistance isn't like a cage that you're in. It's not like you can't work even though you're feeling resistance. Like, you can sit down at the page, feel resistance, say, I'm feeling resistance right now, but then get to work. That is a possible thing to do. And I'm not saying it's easy, but you can work through it. You can work while you're feeling it. You can change your own self-talk while you're working, in order to actually continue to produce work. It might be a time period that you're in where you're just feeling an extra lot of resistance for whatever reason, and you need to step away. But if you don't think that that's it, if you really feel compelled to write this story, which it sounds like you are from your question, I would encourage you, give yourself a limited time, maybe an hour, maybe a day, to wallow in it and maybe explore the thoughts that are creating it, but then also find a way to move on. Like, give yourself that short amount of time to sort of say, yes, I'm feeling resistance, and then decide when it is that you're going to get to work. So that's a little bit of tough love for you, but just know that, it's normal. It's a completely human response to something that's uncomfortable. So that's what I've got to say. Terry, what do you want to add?
Well, I want to add that a way to befriend the resistance. The more you resist the resistance, the more it digs in, right? So I'm going to give us a little focusing exercise on how to befriend that resistance. I find resistance one of those words that's kind of grabbed hold in our lexicon. I find it very male and very not useful. It makes, like churns my gut just hearing about it. So, what if it was just a word? What if it wasn't even something that really happens? What if it's just something we've labeled and then we've kind of dug a hole with it? So let's do a little focusing exercise. The resistance may even be there to help you in some way or another, but you can find out if you check in with your body. So we're just going to, you can close your eyes if you want to. If not, no worries. Just ignore anything I might say, but take whatever might be useful for you. I really like to feel my feet on the floor. It really grounds me. Feeling the support of the earth reminds me that there's support all around me, and I just need to tap into it sometimes. And then there's information in this body of yours that you can tap into. So bringing your attention inward, just maybe following an in-breath through the neck, into your chest and heart area, into your stomach and belly. And see what happens when you say that word resistance. What comes up? And if you're like me, it just kind of makes your gut churn, or you may have another word or another image. So the thing that really turned the corner for me on this was we do have a part of us that wants to write. We, like Stephanie said, we have this compelling story, this need to write. But we don't always acknowledge that there may be a part that doesn't want to do it. And it may be like Stephanie saying, that brain that's like basically lazy and doesn't want to do anything new. But we often take that, and I did this for a long time, take that part that doesn't want to and just kind of stuff it down, stuff it down, stuff it down, like a beach ball in the pool. Eventually it's going to pop up and spray all over you. And that's maybe where you are right now. So turning to that part that doesn't want to do it, just acknowledging that there is most likely a part that doesn't want to do it, even though we may have this very strong part that wants to do it. So turning to that part that doesn't want to write and just listening to it and just befriending it from this solid place that you are, that you can look at it and say, oh, I get it now. No wonder you've been fighting me because you don't want to do this. And that's okay. It's okay if you don't want to do it. And we'll just spend some time, as much time as you can, as much time as you would like, with this part of you that just doesn't want to do it. And if that's not there, you can look for another part that's resisting, that's called resistance, and see who's calling it resistance. You can play around with this quite a bit and just do it in this internal space of yours and not in this cognitive space. Because the cognitive space has gotten us into trouble, calling this resistance, calling this a problem. So we're just going to settle into our bodies, see what comes up when resistance is mentioned, and just tend to those things one by one. Hello, I see you. I acknowledge you. I know you have a valid point of view. And we're going to do this anyway, but, just giving them a little space, and you'll find they may ease up. You may have to do it a lot. You may have to do it every time you sit down to write. But spending some time acknowledging those things that don't want to do what you want to do will make your writing life easier in the long run. So just coming back whenever you're ready. And again, you can come back to this exercise whenever you feel that pull. Carrie.
So I had to laugh a little when I read this question because I feel very seen. I literally was dealing with this last week. So I am right on the verge of a new draft, a new revision, starting my next layer as I think about them sometimes. And I absolutely was feeling resistance to this. And what got me over the hump, temporarily at least, but let's be positive and say it got me over the hump and I'm on my way now, is really doing the same kind of work that Stephanie and Terry have been talking about. It was figuring out sort of what the root of the resistance was. So it was doing a little thinking about like what exactly is the roadblock for me. And this particular instance, I really determined that there were some new scenes that I knew I had to write, and I was feeling really conflicted isn't the right word, confused about what those should be, and just like thinking, I know I need to write these new scenes, but I felt like a really blank slate. So what I did was just give myself some time and space to say, instead of sit down and look at a blank page, I went back to my inside outline and started thinking about those scenes from a really high level, and just tried to like flesh out just a little bit, just enough so that when I do go to sit down, I'm not just staring at a blank page. I have a starting point, I have a jumping off point. And just doing some of that work has made me feel less intimidated by the whole thing. The other thing that I started doing was I have gone back to some of Terry's focusing exercises that she's done in the past. And I've also been leaning a little bit on Insight Timer. Surprisingly, Insight Timer is a great app if you like meditation apps. There's a lot of free stuff. I've never done anything paid. I know they do have some paid things, but they also have a lot of things to do with writing. And a particular meditation that worked well for me last week was encouraging you to think about when you finished your first draft, or thinking about another moment of accomplishment and what that felt like, and really bringing it back to how did you feel in your body in that moment. Really trying to think back and embody and embrace those feelings to give yourself a bit of excitement, a bit of feeling, momentum and motivation and success, to counteract maybe that negativity that this resistance is bringing up. So I've been trying to come back to that kind of thing, just taking a little time each day to focus back on that kind of feeling, or doing another sort of guided meditation or focusing exercise. Even just taking 5 minutes has proven to be, I think, really helpful. Because when you, at the beginning of these things or in the middle of them, it doesn't really matter what stage you're at, but you can just feel sometimes very overwhelmed. And I think that that's, for me anyway, a lot of where the resistance comes from. So taking some time to focus and reorient and break things down in a way that feels doable and manageable, has been always really helpful for me. And then the other thing that I would ask too, in sort of trying to root out where the resistance is coming from, you had mentioned that when you sit down to write, you find it hard to put words on the page. So is there a way that you can sort of tweak your writing that might make it a little bit easier for you? Like are you trying to be creative at a particular time of day that you're really like just exhausted already and kind of burnt out, and that just makes it really difficult to write? Or, is your energy flagging? Maybe think about if you can set aside an hour earlier in the day or at another time, whenever your sort of creative energy feels like it's at its peak. Or is there a different place in your house? Like maybe you're working, as a lot of us are working from home, and you're in your home office. And so your mind immediately goes to all the other 12 million things that you need to do that aren't writing related. But maybe if you could find a little nook in your bedroom or in your living room that you could sit, that change in perspective can help trigger, the good part of creativity, the overcoming that resistance. So those are just some things to think about. Just coming back to the mindfulness of it all. I think both Stephanie and Terry have talked a lot about that. And then I think that is a really successful way to overcome this kind of resistance to creative work.
Yeah, I think that it's just so interesting the way the mind works. And I was thinking, that's so true for me, Carrie, what you're saying about time and place. Because if I'm in a space or a time of day where my brain is already swirling with other things from my life, then if I'm feeling at all resistant about writing and I have to sit down and do it, then I can't. Like all that other stuff just gets right in the way. So yeah, that was a really great point. And I just want to say again that really it's about not just getting swept up in the resistance or trying to stuff it down like Terry was saying, but just being still and breathing and allowing it and exploring what it's about. It feels really scary sometimes, but it's worth doing because that's the easier route for sure. So that's it for us today. We hope that you found an answer that worked for you at this point in your life and at this point in your book. Remember, you can submit your question to us anytime at dearbookcoach.com, and also subscribe to our weekly email to win monthly be eligible monthly to win a call with a coach. Also, we wanted to let you know that during the month of September, we're doing a weekly Instagram Live to talk about our mentor, Jenny Nash's new book, Blueprint for a Book. So be sure to follow us on Instagram to catch those. We will see you next time.
Bye-bye.